I never should have gone into that bathroom alone. My name is Elena Harper, and my best friend Marcus Flynn warned me about the game. But curiosity always wins, and when I saw the cracked mirror staring back at me, I whispered her name Bloody Mary 3 times. At first, nothing happened. Then the reflection behind me moved on its own, smiling with hollow black eyes. And that's when I realized I wasn't alone, not anymore. I had always thought I was brave, the kind of person who laughed at ghost stories and scoffed at urban legends. That was before I ever heard her name whispered in the dark corners of the internet or shouted across the dimly lit hallways of my school bathroom. Bloody Mary. The name itself sounded like it belonged to some old forgotten nightmare, something out of a story meant to scare children. And yet, somehow, the idea of summoning her became an obsession, something I couldn't resist. That night, alone in my bathroom, I felt the thrill and fear swirl together like a storm. The mirror in front of me was tall and narrow, framed with cheap wood that had seen better days. Steam from my hot shower had fogged it, blurring the reflection just enough to make everything feel dreamlike, unreal. My phone lay on the counter, its flashlight flickering, and for some reason that flicker made me nervous, as if it had a heartbeat of its own. The dare itself had seemed harmless. A few friends had laughed and teased me, daring me to say her name 3 times while staring into the mirror. It's just a prank, I told myself. A stupid story. Nothing will happen. I could feel my pulse speeding anyway, each beat thudding like a warning I wasn't ready to hear. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my shaking hands, and leaned closer. The bathroom grew silent, the kind of silence that presses into your ears and makes every tiny sound explode. My own breathing sounded loud, harsh, and uneven. I said her name once, my voice cracked. Nothing happened. I laughed nervously, shaking my head twice. My reflection followed me exactly, my eyes tracking my own movements, normal in every way, or so I thought. And then I said it a 3rd time. The room seemed to hold its breath, the shadows stretching longer across the walls, curling in strange shapes that shouldn't have been there. My reflection didn't move. It froze, and behind me, in the glass, a second face appeared, pale, dripping wet, with hollow black eyes that pierced straight into mine. My stomach dropped, and for a moment I thought I had fainted. Her lips curled into a slow, deliberate smile. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was predatory, as though she had been waiting for me, watching me, learning me, and now she had a plan I couldn't escape. I spun around, my legs trembling, but the bathroom was empty. The air was thick, humid and stifling, as though the walls themselves were closing in. I faced the mirror again, my own reflection staring back, but now it didn't feel like mine. My eyes seemed dull, almost hollow, like they had been drained of life. And then I noticed it. The corner of her mouth, pressed faintly against the edge of my reflection, smeared with something dark and sticky, blood. I realized, though there was none on me. I stumbled backward, trying to shake off the terror, my hands clawing at the sink for support. The mirror seemed impossibly tall now, stretching upward like it wanted to swallow me whole. Every instinct screamed at me to leave the room, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. My reflection, the one that wasn't really mine, tilted its head slightly, watching me with that same cold, patient gaze. It was smiling now, a slow, malicious curve, wet and glistening in the steam, and I saw it, a faint smear of red, running from the corner of her mouth, dripping down the glass in a line that defied gravity, leaving a trail that didn't make sense. My breath caught, and a cold electric dread ran down my spine. I turned to leave, my feet trembling so badly I could barely stand, but the door handle wouldn't budge, as though something heavy and invisible pressed against it from the other side. Panic clawed at my chest. I tried to scream, but my throat felt frozen, my voice trapped inside me. I forced my eyes back to the mirror. She was closer now, her face nearly touching mine, her eyes wide, empty, and hungry. I could see the faint reflection of her fingers pressing against the glass, reaching, stretching, testing the boundary between the world and mine. I stumbled backward and finally tore the door open. I ran down the hall, the cold air of my apartment biting into my skin, and didn't stop until I was in my bedroom, shaking, gasping, drenched in sweat. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the steam, just my imagination, but deep down I knew the truth. I had seen her. She had been in the mirror, and somehow she had looked at me and smiled, and that's when I noticed it. On the bathroom floor, faint but unmistakable, was a small smear of red. A perfect little fingerprint pressed into the tiles, as if someone or something had left a warning. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the city outside my window. Every creak, every distant footstep, made my heart jump. I kept replaying what I had seen in the mirror, over and over, as if by memorizing every detail I could somehow prepare myself for it. But the harder I tried to rationalize it, the more I felt the walls closing in. Every shadow seemed to twist, every corner of my room seemed darker than it should be. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, just beyond my sight, waiting. When I finally closed my eyes, I thought I might be able to escape it, but sleep brought nothing but visions of her. I saw her standing in the corners of my room, pale and dripping, her eyes hollow and black. She didn't move, didn't speak. Yet I could feel her watching me, studying me. Every time I tried to open my eyes, she was closer, pressing her face into the darkness, as if she wanted me to notice her, to see her. And then, without warning, she vanished. The room was silent. The air felt thick, heavy, like it had been sucked of warmth. Morning brought little relief. Light should have chased away the terror of the night, but it didn't. Mirrors had become dangerous places. I avoided them, covering every reflective surface I could find with towels, blankets, even cardboard. The bathroom mirror remained covered, but I could still see her everywhere else. In the kitchen window, in the black screen of my phone, in the shiny handle of the refrigerator. Every reflection was a reminder that she was patient, that she could wait as long as she wanted. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, but deep down I knew it wasn't. The scratching started that night. At first it was soft, almost polite, like someone was tapping lightly on glass. Then it grew louder, more urgent, as though whatever was on the other side of the mirror wanted out. My hands trembled as I moved toward the sound. My apartment, which had felt safe for years, now felt like a trap. Each step was slow, deliberate, as if the floor itself was conspiring against me. When I finally reached the bathroom door, I froze. The scratching stopped, replaced by a silence so heavy it pressed against my ears and made them ring. I turned on my phone's flashlight and shined it into the bathroom. The mirror glowed faintly in the dim light, fogged from my earlier shower. And there she was, not behind me this time but inside the glass, pressing her pale hands against it as if she wanted to reach through. Her eyes were wide, dark, endless, and I felt my stomach twist in terror. Her lips parted slightly, revealing teeth too sharp, too perfect, and I could sense her grinning at me. My mind screamed at me to look away, to run, but I couldn't move. The light flickered once, twice, and she was gone. I exhaled shakily, my hands trembling, telling myself it was just a trick of the shadows. But then I felt a wet streak running down my arm. I looked at my hands in horror. Blood, but I had no cuts, nothing to explain it. And when I looked closer, I realized the worst part, a tiny pale fingerprint pressed into the wet streak, small and delicate, like it didn't belong to me. My breath caught, and a shiver ran through me. I wanted to throw up. From that night on, I couldn't sleep alone in my room. I stayed on the couch, covering every reflective surface, but even that wasn't enough. Every night, I would hear her whispers, soft and wet, like someone breathing from inside the glass itself. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, studying, always patient, always waiting. I started to dread the sound of my own reflection. Sometimes, when I passed a window or a mirror, I thought I could see her standing behind me, grinning with those hollow black eyes. I tried to rationalize it, to remind myself that I had done this, that I had invited her in. But the thought only made it worse. It was my fault she knew my name, my face, my fears. I had given her permission to enter my life, and now she was everywhere. Even in the bright daylight, she haunted me. The reflection in the fridge didn't lie. The glass of my phone didn't lie. She was there, waiting, patient, and unstoppable. And then I noticed the fingerprints. Faint, smeared, but unmistakable, appearing on surfaces I hadn't even thought to cover. They led from the bathroom to the living room, and sometimes they stopped in places I hadn't been. I followed them once, shaking and scared, but they always ended in a smear of red, never leading back to her, never leading anywhere I could reach. The thought that she could touch me without being there made my stomach churn. I didn't know how she had done it, or if she even needed a mirror anymore. I lay awake that night, listening to the silence, waiting for the scratching, waiting for the wet whisper of her breath. I knew she was still there, just beyond my vision, just out of reach. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. Hiding wouldn't save me. By now, I had stopped thinking about whether she was real. That question didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was survival, and I wasn't sure how to survive something I couldn't see but could feel everywhere. My apartment, once familiar and safe, had turned into a cage. Mirrors, windows, even the shiny surface of my laptop screen, everything had become a trap, a doorway for her to watch me. I started avoiding them, covering anything reflective, but even then, I could feel her presence pressing against me, patient, waiting for the smallest slip. Sleep was impossible. I spent the nights on the couch, wrapped in blankets, staring at the dark corners of my living room. Every shadow seemed alive. Every tiny movement made my stomach twist. I imagined her there, grinning, her hollow eyes watching, studying. At first I thought I might be going insane. Maybe the fear had taken over my mind completely, but the signs were too real. The scratches, the wet fingerprints, the faint traces of blood that appeared for no reason. They couldn't be imagination. One night, I awoke to a sound so soft I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. A faint scratching, coming from the hallway. My heart started pounding, my breath quickening. I froze, listening. It stopped. I dared not move. I told myself to ignore it, to remind myself that I had done this, that this was punishment for my curiosity, and that maybe if I stayed still, it would leave me alone. But it didn't leave. The sound returned, closer now, more deliberate, and I realized it wasn't random. It had a pattern, a rhythm, almost like footsteps but on glass. I knew the hallway mirror would show nothing, but I couldn't resist. My body moved of its own accord, every step heavy with dread. When I finally reached it, the mirror was empty. I exhaled, relief flooding through me, only to notice something that made my blood run cold. The reflection in the mirror was delayed. My own movements lagged behind, jerking slightly after I moved, and behind me, in the glass, I saw a pale shape standing just out of the corner of my vision. I turned. Nothing. I turned back to the mirror. She was closer now, her hands pressed to the glass as if she had been reaching toward me the whole time. Her smile was wide, predatory, wet with something dark. I could feel her hunger, not for my life but for my fear. She didn't need to speak. The message was clear. She was in control, and I was powerless. I stumbled backward, my hands shaking violently, and knocked over a small lamp. The crash echoed through the apartment, but the mirror stayed untouched. She didn't flinch, didn't react. She simply watched. I fled to the bedroom, desperate for safety, and covered every reflective surface I could find. Mirrors, picture frames, the polished metal of my dresser handles, everything was draped in cloth. I tried to convince myself that if I couldn't see her, she couldn't reach me, but that was a lie. Her presence pressed into the walls, into the air, into my chest. I could feel her in my own body sometimes, a cold weight settling over me, coiling around my heart like ice. The worst part was the fingerprints. They appeared everywhere, small and pale, sometimes wet, sometimes dried. They led from room to room, tracing paths that didn't make sense. I followed them once, shaking and terrified, only to find them stopping in the middle of the floor, a smear of red at the center, as if whoever or whatever had made them had vanished into thin air. And sometimes, just sometimes, I could swear that I saw my own reflection moving differently than I was moving. Subtle shifts, the faintest curl of a smile that wasn't mine. I started to dread the sound of my own movements. Footsteps on the carpet, the creak of a chair, even the soft rustle of a blanket made my stomach twist. I imagined her behind me, grinning, waiting to strike, to press through the walls of my reality. I couldn't tell if I was awake or dreaming anymore. The line blurred, and sometimes I felt her even when I closed my eyes, her presence pressing against my chest, whispering something I couldn't hear but felt with bone-deep certainty. Then came the window. I had been careful, leaving it closed, but one night I saw a face in the dark glass. Not my own, not anyone I recognized. Pale, hollow, and dripping as if water ran down her cheeks but never landed. Her mouth moved, not speaking words I could hear, but the meaning was clear. She was watching, always watching, and she could reach me anywhere. My reflection was no longer the safest place. Mirrors, windows, shiny surfaces, they were all portals. And in that moment, I realized the terrifying truth. Hiding wasn't enough. Covering every reflective surface wouldn't save me. She was patient. She was endless. She was inside every shadow, every darkened corner, every part of me I thought was safe. By now, I had stopped pretending I could control anything. Mirrors, windows, polished surfaces, none of it mattered. She was everywhere, patient and unrelenting, and the fear had become part of me. I didn't leave my apartment anymore. I didn't answer the door. I barely ate. Every step, every glance, every sound became a potential signal that she was closer, waiting, testing me. The apartment that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a trap I couldn't escape. I started covering everything with towels and sheets, thick layers over mirrors, frames, even the metallic handles of drawers and doors. I lived in near darkness, letting only the faint glow of a single lamp light the room. I thought maybe if I minimized reflections, she couldn't see me, but it was useless. I felt her presence pressing into the walls, breathing in the air with me, waiting for me to let my guard down. I could sense her everywhere, the subtle weight of her stare behind my eyes, the pressure of her hands in the air around me. One evening, desperate for answers, I scoured the internet. I found forums filled with people like me, people who had called her name, who had seen her face, who had felt her reach beyond the glass. The stories were worse than I could have imagined. Some reported waking to scratches on walls, mirrors, shattered rooms drenched in blood. Others spoke of waking to find that their own reflections had moved on their own, grinning in ways they never had. Every account ended the same way: fear, madness, and the feeling that she was inside them, patient, waiting, never leaving. I read the stories with trembling hands, realizing that my own experiences were only getting worse, not better. That night, I awoke to the sound of my own laughter. My mouth was closed, my throat tight, but the sound echoed through the apartment, high-pitched, cruel. My body stiffened, terror coursing through my veins. I looked around. No one was there. The light from my lamp flickered and dimmed, shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. And then I saw her. She was in the hallway mirror, standing behind me, or maybe inside me, I couldn't tell. Her grin was wider than ever, teeth sharp, wet, glistening. My reflection didn't move the same way I did. It mimicked me, but with subtle differences. The tilt of her head, the curl of her lips, the emptiness in her eyes. My stomach dropped. I could feel her presence in my chest, pressing heavy, almost like a hand wrapped around my heart. I backed away, trembling, and my reflection followed, grinning, reaching through the glass as if the barrier was no longer there. I realized then that the stories were true. She didn't need mirrors. She could reach me through any reflective surface, any glimpse of myself, any shadow. She was patient, eternal, and she was inside me now, waiting for the moment when she could fully take over. I tried to escape, running to the living room. I covered the windows, the TV screen, the polished table, anything that could reflect me, but she was already there. I could hear her whisper, wet and cruel, pressing against the edges of my consciousness. My own thoughts started twisting, turning against me. I felt my mind slipping, a cold panic crawling into every corner of my brain. And then I saw it, the fingerprints. They were everywhere now, not just on mirrors or glass, but on the walls, on the floor, across my furniture. Small, pale, dripping faintly with a dark red substance that wasn't entirely blood. They led from room to room, sometimes stopping in the middle of nowhere, as if she had vanished into thin air. And in every smear, in every print, I saw her face pressed against the surface, grinning, watching. I sank to the floor, shaking, feeling the cold weight of her presence pressing into me. My own reflection twisted, smiling at me from every angle, mocking me. I realized then that I couldn't hide. She would wait. She would watch. And eventually she would take what she wanted. I could feel her reaching, stretching, testing the limits of my fear. And then I heard the whisper in my own mind, a wet, hungry voice I couldn't ignore. It didn't say words, but I understood perfectly. She was offering a choice, or maybe a threat. Stay, and she would be patient, silent, watching, try to run, and she would find me, tear me apart piece by piece until only my reflection remained. I understood then that nothing I did would stop her. Covering mirrors, hiding in darkness, fleeing, none of it mattered. She was already inside me. She was patient, eternal, and she would never leave. I don't know how long I've been like this, trapped in my own apartment, haunted by her presence. Time no longer has meaning. Days and nights blend together into one endless stretch of fear. I don't leave my bed anymore. Don't eat, don't speak. Every sound, every movement, every flicker of light reminds me that she is here, patient, waiting, always watching. I cover every reflective surface I can, but it doesn't matter. She is inside the shadows, inside the walls, inside me. I can feel her pressing into my chest, her cold fingers curling around my ribs, squeezing my lungs, testing my limits. I tried to document everything once, to write it down, to make sense of it, but even my pen betrayed me. The ink smeared into strange patterns, red and black, forming shapes I couldn't identify. My own handwriting shifted on the page, twisting into something I didn't recognize, and when I looked up at the mirror across the room, even though it was covered, I could see the faint outline of her face through the cloth. She was smiling, wider and crueler than ever, pressing her face as if she could push through any barrier. I've stopped thinking about fighting her. That's impossible. I've stopped thinking about escaping. There's nowhere to go. Every reflective surface I can't cover, every shadow in every corner, becomes a doorway for her. She doesn't need mirrors anymore. She doesn't need doors. She is inside me now, and she's patient, eternally patient. I can feel her waiting for the moment when I slip, when I relax for a second, when I lower my guard, and I know she will strike then. Last night I woke to a cold hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but the room was empty. I could feel her behind me, pressing into my back, whispering wetly, her breath cold against my neck. I dared not move. My own body felt alien, as though it belonged to her now, not to me. I looked down at my hands and froze. They were red, not from blood, but from something darker, something that pulsed and shifted as if it had a life of its own. I felt my fingers twitching, moving against my will, reaching for surfaces I wasn't supposed to touch. Then I saw my reflection. I hadn't dared to look into a mirror in weeks, but now it was unavoidable. And when I did, I screamed silently in my mind. It wasn't my face staring back at me, it was hers, pale, wet, hollow-eyed, grinning in a way that made my chest tighten and my lips moved, not me. She was speaking through me, whispering words I couldn't understand but felt like they were commands. I tried to scream, to push her out, but it was useless. She controlled me now. She was patient, but she didn't need patience anymore. I understood then the truth, and it chilled me to the bone. I had never summoned her. She had always been there, inside me, waiting. All the dares, all the rituals, all the mirrors, they were just invitations I didn't know I had given. And now, she doesn't need mirrors. She doesn't need windows. She doesn't need anything but me. I am the doorway. I am the reflection. I am her vessel. And tonight, as I lie here feeling her press against my ribs, I realize the most terrifying part. She is patient, but she is also hungry. Not for my life, not yet. She wants the world outside. She wants the next person who dares to look into a mirror. The next person who whispers her name, the next person who thinks they are brave, and I can feel her reaching outward through me, testing, waiting, pressing. I am no longer just myself. I am a warning. I am a gateway. I don't know if anyone will read this. I don't know if anyone will believe it. But if you look into a mirror tonight, be careful. Don't laugh. Don't speak her name. Don't even think about her. Because if she answers, if she sees you, She doesn't need permission. She doesn't need a reflection. She will find a way in. And sometimes, the worst part is realizing it isn't even your reflection she wants sits you. I feel her now, coiling through my chest like a living shadow, pressing her face into my own, grinning, whispering, and I know that soon, she will be ready, not just inside me, but beyond me, waiting, watching, patient, eternal, and there will be no escape.